Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by John Boy Media. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And we have the 2022 Tony Award winner, Art Stapleton, on. We had a long conversation with him talking about Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, got those buzzwords in there, and then just covering this team as a whole this season, and some just fun conversations about media in general. Justin, I want to talk a little bit about the next few weeks of our plans, but I'm pumped to get down to Mobile before we kick it to this interview.
Yeah, I'm really pumped to get down to Mobile, Alabama. Hi, Bobby Skinner. Hi, everybody. Another note that I want to include about the Art interview, two clips that I have coming up, like two of my favorite parts, is the players that are competing against each other, like in ping pong or whether it's just locker room kind of competitions. Art talks about that. I always love that, and this is why I really miss beat reporters being in the locker room, is I love hearing who are these guys as people? Who are these players as people? So hearing who's competing with each other and what was pretty cool. And also, Art Stapleton talked about this regime, comparing it to some of the past regimes too, about being honest. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah, but we have a very busy upcoming next few weeks, and I'm so pumped to get to the Senior Bowl. I'm basically done with the wide receivers, and I think there's going to be a lot of good wide receivers at the Senior Bowl. So if Joe Schoen isn't strictly on this process and this taking players based on them being like 21 years or younger, then we should maybe see a possible Giants future wide receiver at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. I've been looking at the edge players. There's a couple names that are down there that I'm pumped to see, like Isaiah McGuire out of Mizzou. Like, go watch this game versus Georgia and you'll kind of fall in love with him. Keon Jones out of Georgia Tech, who's just like a ball of muscle, which kind of fits the bill of what they've looked for, and back in Buffalo with Joe Schoen, trying to connect dots there. Because really the only edge that they've added has been Kayvon Thibodeau, which is like, that's not a scheme thing. That's just taking the best player available at the time. So really excited to go down there, watch O-line, D-line. We have a lot of stuff planned. I guess we were talking about doing this after the interview. We could talk about Daytona after the interview. So we're going to be down there the entire week, Justin. Yep. We're going to have two regular Talking Giants podcasts. From then we're going to live stream daily, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, post practice from there. We're also going to just have like Senior Bowl roundups on the JM Football channel. We got two Senior Bowl player breakdowns coming on the JM Football channel next week, so make sure to go subscribe to the JM Football. Maybe we could put the link in the description for that, Justin.
We will do that.
It's now that we've wind down from the season, it's like, okay, this is my favorite week. This is my favorite like trip / content of the year, is the Senior Bowl, because you're just learning about new players. You're getting to watch guys live. You're getting to see small school guys go up against much better talent. I think it's not the most important thing of the process. At the end of the day, it's about what you do on film. But I do think it can help you, and it can hurt guys too. Like Patrick Jones out of Pittsburgh, man, he was a guy who was fun to watch. Goes down to the Senior Bowl, and he didn't look good, and changed my view of him. So very excited for it.
I agree. Very excited. Go subscribe to JM Football. Go check out JM Football. There's going to be a lot of Senior Bowl content on that channel.
Yeah. We're going to live stream from that channel too. Grump from the Just Giants podcast will be down there with us. Robert Smits, who has been on this podcast like 3 or 4 times. He covers the Bears. And our friends from, I don't know how much content we're going to do with them, but the Cover One guys, who were like our cheat sheet for when the Giants started hiring all Bills personnel and Bills players. Those guys will be down there. So
we can do some social stuff with them, and we'll turn it into shorts and reels and stuff like that.
There you go. Maybe we will try and go, hunt out Joe Schoen and Brian Dable in the nightlife too in Alabama.
In the nightlife?
Yeah, we can just like Joe Schoen. What karaoke song do you want to come to?
That's a song. Yeah.
First, before we get into this Art interview, this episode was brought to you by DraftKings. 4 NFL teams, 2 conference championship games, and only a few more shots to win big on the playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Counting down to Super Bowl 57. Wow, it's really 57. New customers can bet just $5 and get 200 in free bets instantly. Not a new customer? You can feel the conference championship thrills with stepped-up same-game parlays. Take your shot at an even bigger NFL payout and boost your winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. That's crazy. I hate to say it, Justin. I think the Eagles can beat the 49ers.
I'm going to the Super Bowl, so I do not want to see the Eagles in it.
Justin, I took a step back and looked at Brock Purdy's stats. He has like MVP stats on a per game rate.
Sure.
Like if he did what he would be in the MVP conversation, you know. And obviously it's great surroundings, but it's like those he's putting up like in 7 games he has like 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's just maybe Brock Purdy, and he makes some tough throws too, even though he doesn't have the greatest arm, you know. And he's had some dropped interceptions too, but you know, Purdy, you know, but it's just the Eagles. I worry about them.
Go Niners.
Go Niners. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code WORLD. New customers can bet $5 on any conference championship and get $200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code WORLD. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. And here's Art Stapleton. All right, first interview of the offseason, and we had to do it with an award winner. We did our award show on Tuesday. Now we have an award winner on. Some people thought it was going to be Julian Love because we said at the last pod that we're going to have an award winner on, and then Julian Love tweets out Talking Giants versus the World, but it's none other than the 2022, not sure if you're a good person, but best Giants reporter, presented by Kadarius Toney Award, presented by Talking Giants winner, Art Stapleton. Art, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing well. It's I didn't prepare a speech, but I do appreciate the gear and being some clown. I was going to bring $1 for you guys. I thought that would be appropriate. But...
yeah, because I do want $1. Like when Kadarius Toney asked that, like, yeah,
I'm sorry,
I would take $1.
Not dollar. But we'll all be watching Kadarius this weekend and living vicariously through his 5 catches, 15 yards, and a touchdown performance for the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, that's kind of like what he's destined at this point, where it's like he's going to get like a touchdown, it's going to be crazy, and then it's just like not consistent. But with the award, it's funny, we made the award as a joke, and now it's like it's kind of like a real award. Like who's the best Giants reporter this year? So,
well, let's be honest, Bobby and Justin. The reality is that we could talk all we want as a beat, but we have just as much ego as everybody else. So it doesn't matter who's giving out the award. Talking Giants, the Giants. We saw this week some 101 Sports is giving out Coach of the Years, and all of a sudden the Giants are celebrating Brian Dable as the 101 Coach of the Year. But no, it's appreciated. I mean, look, you guys have a unique relationship with us on the beat and in the media, that you are media, but you're not media. You're at camp every day more than some beat writers, and yet you're not beat writers. So it's a complicated relationship with us, and Talking Giants. But I do think, from my perspective, I respect the hell out of what you guys do, and it is appreciative of your fan base that crosses over a little bit. So I am definitely happy that Dan Duggan was ineligible, and I have the opportunity to win this award. It's been a while. I've been shut out, so it's nice to hear from you guys.
Was the Duncan card part of the award this year too, Bobby?
Yes, and it has a picture of Kadarius Toney on it too.
Yes, it does, and it was classic. Absolutely classic.
What's your go-to order at Duncan?
You know what? I'm pretty basic. So I would go extra large French vanilla coffee, a couple sugars, but now they've all screwed up. They've screwed up the sweetener at Dunkin'. I'm not happy with the way they don't just do French vanilla as it used to be French vanilla coffee. Now they put in French vanilla sweetener, so it goes too sweet, but it's definitely appreciative. And when I opened up the card that you had sent, and I flipped it open and saw Kadarius's picture, that meant everything. I mean, that's one of those cards that you're not going to throw away. You're going to keep and have that. So it's definitely appreciated from you guys. And, I'm definitely part of the Talking Giants versus the World now.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Let's get into some Giants football, though. And I'm going to hit you with the heaviest question first. This is the heaviest question you're going to get.
Okay.
With the franchise tag for running back probably being less than what the average annual value that Saquon Barkley wants and would be reasonable for him, do you think Joe Shane is willing to Le'Veon Bell this situation where hey, we'll try and figure out a contract, but we are more than happy to just franchise tag him?
I do think they'll use the franchise tag if they have to, but I think let's go back to what the franchise tag is allegedly supposed to represent, right? It's supposed to be a negotiating tool. It's supposed to give you a number that you work off of. And for the player and his representatives, it's supposed to be a number where, you want more than that because they can stick you with just that lower number and just move on from that. I would imagine that had a lot to do with their talkings, both Saquon and his reps and Joe Schoen in the front office during the bye week. And I do think that Joe Schoen will use the franchise tag if he feels it necessary to keep Saquon here. And let's look at Le'Veon Bell's situation, which I think is an interesting one. It became very cantankerous, and we know what happened with the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell. And ultimately, it was the end of Le'Veon Bell's career in the NFL. So if anything, I would think Saquon Barkley is wise enough to know where he's been injury-wise and now where he is right now. It might not be fair to him as a person, but I think as a player, I think they will use it as a hammer. And I think he's got to make the decision, knowing how much he's dealt with injury-wise. If they offer me a year that's annual value at 14, not at 10 or at 13 and a half, that extra $3 million you might not get in a year if you go through a full year with the Giants. And look, we all know Saquon's personality and his earning power. I don't know if that's in him right now, considering what he's gone through. I don't know if he's, you know what? I'll see you guys in September. I'm not being a part of this. I don't know. I think the Giants might test that out of his personality and say, does Saquon, the smiley guy who is involved and a leader and takes so much pride in being a captain, does he really want to go down that route? So, look, I think Joe Schoen will do what he has to do to build this team. And I think the long-winded way to answer your heavy question, Bobby, is I do think that they will use the franchise tag if they have to. If that's the decision they want and they want Saquon here long term, I think they'll use it, and then they'll have to see if they can get Saquon to get off the franchise tag and give them the short-term deal or extension to keep him here beyond 2023.
Yeah, Art, if this is a game of poker, I think Daniel Jones, I think you even tweeted something out like this recently. Daniel Jones is doing a very good job of not showing his hand. And even Joe Schoen is just being kind of like even keel. Oh, Jones is going to be back. That's definitely a little bit more set. But with Saquon Barkley's kind of showing his hand maybe a little bit with the comment of, I want to be a Giant for life, number one. The number two, the much more telling one of, I'm not looking to reset the market. And then Joe Schoen just saying that we weren't even close when we were talking contract extensions over the bye. Some of these things, including like with Leo, it's been very strange to hear how open some of the players are. And, even Joe Schoen, how open he was to describing the negotiations during the bye week with Saquon. So what's your take? I mean, you talk with Saquon all the time. You guys talk with Saquon all the time. What's your take on what he said and how he was kind of during that post-game presser the Monday after that Eagles loss talking about the extension?
I think Saquon is on one hand, being genuine. I mean, that's who he is. He wants to be Mr. Giant. I mean, he wants to be here. He wants to be in New York. He knows the benefits of being a Giant. He doesn't want to go shop himself around the league. But as we said, Justin, it works for Joe Schoen to talk the way he talks for certain negotiations. Saquon's pulling at the heartstrings of a fan base that what percentage loves Saquon? The kids who are wearing Saquon jerseys and ownership and, all the things that people criticize the Giants for taking him number 2 overall. There is an underlying benefit to Saquon playing into that. I am the face of the franchise. He doesn't say that, but he is the face of the franchise. I mean, Saquon is the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for the Giants. There's a lot for him to play into. So I don't think he's doing that intentionally and saying, I'm going to be disingenuous, but I do think it plays to Saquon. Look, Giants, you're really going to get rid of me over a couple $1 million? You're going to let me go and go to somebody else's team? Who's going to be your face of the franchise? Is it Daniel? We're different people. You sell us differently. So I do think that that's part of it. It's funny, Justin, you do mention Leo. I just wanted to mention that, how Joe Schoen brought up the comment that Leo made a pay cut.
He thanked the media.
Yeah, he said it to us in the locker room, and I was there. The funny thing is, I do believe that players and fans, we all talk about every year, and you guys know this, the difference between pay cut and restructure is lost. There's a gray area.
Yeah.
So personally, knowing what I know of Leonard Williams and his representatives and everything and all the negotiations, when he said pay cut, he meant restructure. Yeah. He meant I will restructure my contract to lower the cap hit, but I'm not going to go from making 19 million to now all of a sudden I'm taking 10. Yeah. I don't believe that was the case. And I think Joe Shane knows that. And that's kind of why he put it out there a little bit, knowing that, Leonard Williams in that situation, do you create a little bit of a public situation where, well, you said you were going to take a pay cut. I don't think he meant pay cut. I think he meant restructure. So we'll see how that goes. But Joe didn't miss an opportunity to bring that up in his postseason press conference.
And it's funny how Leonard Williams specifically has gotten. I mean, they have worked it partly because Dave Gettleman put the Giants in a bad situation by trading midseason for an expired contract, but they have. I mean, they've raked the Giants for every penny they can get. But with Leonard Williams, I know people see the $10 million of cap space, so they cut him. There's also $20 million dead cap. I would be shocked if Leonard Williams is not part of this team, and he should be a part of this team. It'd be a huge loss to lose him, and you'd have to. And I don't think there's anything there. I'd rather extend him than lose him, like you said. Right. So
totally agree, and I'm sure if we get into what the biggest weaknesses are for this team, an underlying spot is that interior defensive line.
Absolutely.
Yep. They overextended, and you could almost make an argument that that's how Leonard Williams not got hurt, but was all banged up this year because you cannot play Dexter Lawrence that many snaps moving forward and expect him to be as productive. And I do think there was a dip a couple weeks, midway through the season where Dex, it was really wearing on him. So I do think interior defensive line is a place where they need to fix and add depth. And I do think that Leonard Williams is a part of that. I don't think they want to break up Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams this soon, especially when you're going to have potentially a lot of changes elsewhere on the roster.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to either. Now, Art, one of the things that I'm most excited, when talking with, people on the beat, guys on the beat, people on the beat this year, is you're back in the locker room, which I love that. You're back building those relationships. You're back talking with the players. You're back with kind of your connections, or you're building your connections now that this is a new regime, right? So we know that the last few coaching staffs, stemming back to McAdoo, that we have felt generally positive about that coach after year one. Generally positive. Now, obviously, this may be, and I'm hoping this is a different enthusiasm. So, but how has what you have seen this year in the locker room and inside the building differ from past years you have covered, or is it similar? Is there a different energy? Is there a different way of going about things from an front office and coaching perspective?
It is, and I think when me and you guys were sitting in the parking lot at a training camp, I think that was one of the questions you asked back then, Justin. Oh, yeah. The idea of getting back in the locker room, what was that going to be like? So it's interesting to come full circle. It's a big difference, and you get a feel for how this team works. The ping pong tables, that's the whole, they lose and you got to get the ping pong tables out. If they're winning, it's great camaraderie and the competition between them.
Wait, Art, not to interrupt you, but correct me if I'm wrong. Did I hear Monday? Now, I'm surprised more people maybe didn't hear this because I think people would have lost their minds. Monday, after the Eagle loss and the season's over, did I hear clink, clink, clink? Did I hear ping pongs going on while interviews were happening?
Yes, it was actually there were a lot of rookies that were there. Jay Sean Corbin was playing, Khalil Pimpleton, some of the practice squad linemen. I don't think Corey Cunningham was playing on Monday. But yeah, guys didn't want to leave the locker room too. And that was the other thing. In past, baggy day or pack up day, guys are looking to leave and they weren't looking to sprint out of there. I think there were some guys who felt as though, they still were going to have a game to play this week. But to answer your question, I've been thinking a lot about this, and this is really a big theme for me moving into this offseason. Ben McAdoo, there was a lot of positivity after his first season. Went to the playoffs. We knew what team had coming back. They made a lot of mistakes building that team. They just basically took the 2016 team and said, what holes do we need to fill? Oh, we really are getting beat by cover two. We need a tight end that could bust the seam. We're drafting Evan Ingram, and he's going to solve all of our offensive problems. Well, guess what? 2017, the team imploded, and those problems were never solved. So I look at that and I compare to this season. I don't think it's going to be hey, what didn't work this year, so let's just supplement things. I think Shane and Dable will take their depth chart, put it to the side, and say, how are we building it going forward? Not worrying about what didn't work and what worked this year. Obviously, you know what worked and what didn't work. But Joe Shane's been pretty honest. He said during the bye week, pointing out that they were down 10 points in London against the Packers. They were down to the Ravens. They've kept this honest approach. And what you didn't hear Monday was two guys talking about how they led the NFC East in points. The Giants, for too many years, through McAdoo, through Shermer, and even through Judge to an extent, they looked for reasons to believe, and they had to come up with these stats or something that would make you think they were further along than what they were. And I think that the best thing that this front office and head coaching staff can do is be honest with themselves. We watch this team. We know their shortcomings. We know a lot of this stuff. It wasn't smoke and mirrors, but a lot of the stuff that they did, they made key plays and key spots and overcame the deficiency, right? So when I'm in that locker room on Monday, I'm walking around and you see guys and they're into it and they're talking about coming back. But the reality hits that there are a lot of guys who might not be here next year. So you have to go back to what they've built and what the plan was to get these guys on the field. And, it's about the rookie class that a lot of the guys finished up on the IR and injured. And, one of the things I loved down the stretch was seeing Cordell Flott go toe-to-toe with A.J. Brown in week 18. That is something, if I'm Joe Shane, I'm looking at it going, boy, we might have a guy who can challenge for significant snaps at, if not CB2, maybe CB3 next year. Yep. So that kind of thing. But I appreciate your answer about the locker room, Justin. And from our perspective, it was tremendous. I mean, you get to know guys in this locker room beyond where they were. Graham Gano was really more of a leader, more of a personality in this locker room than I ever would have imagined. I mean, Graham Gano and Leonard Williams, very tight. You can see them playing ping pong all the time. They had a little Post-it note up on the lockers. I think it said Graham and Leo, and had just check marks for how many games they would win, that kind of thing. Davis Webb and Saquon Barkley, battles. Like if I could have videoed one of the days where Davis Webb and Saquon Barkley were competing against each other in ping pong, I would have been able to sell it to so many people. You guys would have looked to sponsor it. It was unbelievable.
Not a bad idea.
So, of course we couldn't video it, but that's where it is. So I know it's, again, another long open-ended answer, but I think to me, the big thing is when they say next year is a new team, it really is a new team, and they've got to work as hard as they did this year, maybe even harder, to develop that camaraderie, develop the chemistry, plug the holes on the roster, and know that it's not going to just be a continuation, because we've all seen it doesn't continue. And when you think it's going to continue, you get into trouble.
You brought us up sponsoring ping pong. We actually talked with some player reps in the offseason about content ideas, and one of the things we talked about was like interviews during ping pong. So maybe we can, now that ping pong's totally back in, we can do that. But I like the point you made about them not giving themselves reasons to believe. And they were one of the last 8 teams in the NFL, right? So, but I think they have a good realization that, hey, we are not one offseason away from being one of the last 4 teams. Obviously, it's the NFL. Anything can happen. You make, some of the right moves. But I think they know that, hey, we're not going to approach this offseason as sign a linebacker, trade for a receiver, make 2 good draft picks at corner and O-line, and we're ready to be one of the last 4. I think they still know, this was awesome, but it is year one, and this is about building a long-term contender, not, like you said, plugging up holes and making a run at it.
Absolutely. And I think, just look at guys who they signed for 1-year deals. I mean, I know the fans were split about John Feliciano at center, and especially when Gates came back. Nick Gates, we all love Nick Gates. So everybody wanted Nick Gates at center, or a lot of people wanted Nick Gates at center. They didn't make that move. They kept him at left guard. You got a serviceable year from Feliciano at center, right? Nothing, it wasn't outrageously good, but it certainly wasn't as outrageously bad as some of the perception was on social media. Now, Bobby, I'll defer to you. You obviously do your line breakdowns.
You want to know what's frustrating, but also not frustrating, is once Gates came back, Feliciano's play went up. That was the best. So it was it's like if we got the same play out of Feliciano the first 8 games of the season while Gates was back, it would have been rioting. But it's his play actually increased once Gates came back.
And I did talk to Feliciano about it late in the year, and he said he had told me, which we really hadn't made a big deal about it. He had lost his nephew in week 1. I don't know if you guys remember that story. So he said emotionally it was a real big impact. And then he was banged up early on. So, maybe look, I'm not saying that Feliciano is the answer. I guess my point is that I think back to, and I don't know, Justin, you may have been 7 years old when it happened, but not really. Remember when Stevie Brown was a big part of this secondary? Stevie Brown came in. He was a journeyman. He came in, led the team in interceptions. It was he and Antrell Roll, and had such a great year. And the team didn't distinguish themselves to the point where I don't even remember what year it was at this point. It was somewhere after Super Bowl 46. I think it was either 13 or 14, something like that. And they brought Stevie Brown back. And it was all right, now we've got one of the best safety duos in the league. And Stevie Brown got off to a okay start, and then he tore his ACL, if I remember correctly, and he was gone. And it was okay, did we expect too much of Stevie Brown? He had a great year, but that's where I think teams, when you don't have a foundation built and you don't build through the draft and you're just picking guys to try to fill holes, I think this team will get in trouble if they all of a sudden say, well, we're good at center because John Feliciano had a pretty good, a good finish to the season. Let's go back to Bredesen and Gates and that rotation at left guard, and Glowinski is back. No, they need to look at this offensive line and say you have dominance at left tackle. You've got a second-year promising rookie who had his share of struggles this year. We all know what Evan Neal went through. But those 3 spots, it's all up for grabs. Get better. Get a better line. And don't fall into the trap that other teams in your history have fallen into and say, oh, we're good enough. Don't be good enough. Get better. And I think that's really a big issue going forward for this team.
I don't want to spend too much time on this next part, and I don't even want to talk about contract. But it seems like Daniel Jones is going to be back, right? And like I said, I don't feel like talking about contract. But how did he evolve in their eyes from a guy that they didn't plan to have back? People, when we were at training camp, there was people who told us probably not going to be back here. They declined his option. How did that evolve besides just winning games? Because we know there is a history of the Buffalo Bills making the playoffs and them still moving off a guy like Tyrod Taylor, even though Jones played much, I think, better than Tyrod Taylor.
Right. Well, I think you obviously the initial reference is for the 5th-year option, and we wouldn't be talking about this if they believed in Daniel Jones back in March. They would have picked up, or in May, they would have picked up the 5th-year option, and Daniel Jones would be locked in for next year at $30 million or so. I think that what Jones did is evolve with this system. I think he's learned, especially with Shea Tierney this year, a big point of emphasis was making plays out of the pocket. And I think one of the things that we saw from Daniel Jones the last couple of years is that when he got it out of the pocket, if that first read wasn't there, he was gone. He was running and scrambling. And it was really haphazard because there really was nothing schematically that was done when he broke the pocket. I think this year they made a lot of strides in that. Jones showed. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember. I think it was the beginning of last season or even the year before when Garrett was the OC. There was a play, I think it was in the preseason early on. They were down in the red zone. Daniel broke to his right, broke out of the pocket, threw on the run, and threw about 10 yards wide of Evan Ingram in the end zone.
That
And
was the Patriots preseason game.
thank you, Bobby. See,
Yeah.
and I remember that play, and I've thought about that play all year. Like to think that Daniel has gone what was a weakness, and I think people said at that point, and we had every reason to believe
It was a weakness.
Daniel couldn't make plays on the run,
Yeah.
and that was a huge factor in his presence as a quarterback or lack thereof. And I think this year that was a huge stride that they made. Another part of why Daniel Jones is the guy for them right now. They played their way out of contention for someone to replace him.
Yeah.
Really did. They played their way. They're sitting at 25th. I don't know how deep they're going to dig into, the quarterbacks in the draft now, but they know they're out of the range of all the names that we've all talked about. And at that point, if you're really going to wait until the end of April before you solve your quarterback situation, I just don't think. I think they're smart enough to know they would love to get, in my mind, a short-term contract for Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
You get 3 years. I don't know, 3 years, 95 million. 3 years, do you have to go up to 100 million? I don't know, but then it comes down to the guarantees. I think that would be the perfect deal to make with him, because you don't want to lock in 5 years and then if you just crash and burn, then you're stuck on a quarterback that maybe not everybody believed in. But that to me, I think it's twofold, Bobby. I think he grew with this system, with these coaches. He made plays, but I think also they kind of played their way out of contention that would have been that opportunity to say, well, we're not going to spend $35 million a year on Daniel Jones when we can just draft CJ Stroud, and plug him in because we're a top 10 team and we can just trade up to 2 or 3 and get that guy.
Yeah. And one of the things that I like about having, I think the Giants are going to have this flexibility, even if like people are going to freak out over the average annual value of Daniel Jones, kind of no matter what it is. But if it's like one of those deals where it's a 3-year deal, then you can still, if the Giants have this desire to draft a quarterback, you can still do that and have Daniel Jones on the roster. I mean, there have been teams that have done that before 100%. I want to move to Mike Kafka because there's a shot. Now, I think if Mike Kafka were smart, maybe he wouldn't take that Texans job, but but Mike Kafka could always leave, right? That's a possibility. So if he were to go, would you see Dable promoting Shea Tierney? Would Mike Rowe be somebody that's promoted? Or even would Dable look to the outside? Or even Davis Webb's the wild card in year 2. Maybe not for OC, but kind of being involved in this coaching staff if Dable wants. What's your perception on that?
Yeah, I think if you're going inside, I think he would go Shea Tierney as offensive coordinator. Maybe Dable gets back into calling some of the plays more than he did with Kafka. And then, maybe Davis Webb would be hired as quarterbacks coach to back up Tierney, and they keep that together. But I can only go by what they showed us this year, right? And what they showed us last offseason. And Brian Dable did not have any fears or concerns about going outside the organization and doing the interview process and bringing in guys that he liked, things that he knew about. Maybe somebody gets recommended to him and he interviews them. So as much as I would think that if he goes inside, he takes Tierney, that's not, I don't mean this in disrespect. That's a Joe Judge move. That's not a Brian Dable move from what they've shown us as head coaches, right? Joe needed to have people on his staff that he knew, he worked with, he trusted. He didn't think guys were going to go behind his back. I mean, there was a lot of that there. And that some of that comes from New England. Brian Dable didn't operate that way. Brian Dable went out and hired a defensive coordinator in Wink Martindale who's got the biggest personality on the coaching staff, even Dable included, and he had made no bones about wanting a head coaching job in the future. So, Dable could have looked at it and said, I'm not bringing that in here. Like, I don't need that my first year. So I think Dable would probably go outside talk to other guys. I think Tierney would be involved, and then they would try to come up with a game plan, moving forward. But look, I have a ton of respect for Shea Tierney. I know people outside of the building don't really know him that well, but if you go back and read things that Josh Allen said about
Yeah.
Shea Tierney during Josh Allen's ascension and his maturation and development, not when Shea Tierney was leaving for the Giants. That's easy, right? You go to remember when Ben McAdoo came here, everybody runs to Aaron Rodgers. Tell us about Ben McAdoo. And Aaron Rodgers is just glowing with praise. Oh, he's great. He's this, he's that. No, I want to know when they're working together in October of a year that Shea Tierney is going to be there long term. What is that quarterback saying about Shea Tierney? So
I think Allen called him the most underpaid player, like person in the building, or something like that.
That was something that I saw too. And Shea was with Dable when they were in Alabama as well. So it's somebody who sees the game the same way. Again, I don't know if he's ready to be an offensive coordinator. They may love him as quarterbacks coach and say, you have value here with our quarterback. We need you here. But it's certainly if he goes in-house, I would think that is a possibility as far as an offensive coordinator if Kafka goes. But I don't think Kafka's getting that job, Justin. I agree with you. You have to address it because he went in for a second meeting. So, but I think Kafka will be back for this year. And if not, then they'll just figure it out. I mean, and I think you have to have faith that the way Dable constructed this coaching staff this year gives you faith that he's not just doing it to bring his buddies in, or he can't get someone to come and coach with him. I mean, clearly, you have big names who could have gone elsewhere, yet decided they wanted to coach with Brian Dable. I think that says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of put together an all-star assistant. Like Andre Patterson is is maybe the most respected D-line coach in the NFL, and we saw fruits of that this year. And this time last year, Brian Dable was hired on the Friday that this is coming out. Patrick Graham was supposed to be his defensive coordinator. He gets rubbed the wrong way. Josh McDaniel gets the head coaching job. He's gone, and they were able to get Wink Martindale, who was one of the most respected defensive coordinators in the league. Got a few more questions. Maybe we could do some quick hitters. This one I'm asking just because I love to hear everybody's answer, and we do our awards at the end of the year. For this award, 25 different people got votes. Who is the most underrated player on this Giants team? And that could be from a league-wide view or a Giants fan view.
That is a great question. The first person that jumped into my mind was Julian Love.
He won it by the listeners.
Okay. Julian, let's see, Tony Award winner, listeners. I match up. We're on the same page. But I think look, the problem when assessing Julian is that Julian is so good. He's on the radio. He's great with us. He earns our
the Good Guy Award.
Right, exactly. So I think maybe overlooked the idea that he was set up to have an even better season before Xavier McKinney got hurt. And then he had to move into the Xavier McKinney role. So I think that's kind of overlooked. If he played the role that they initially had him playing early on, when he made two of the biggest plays in the early part of the season, people forget because of the way Carolina ended up, but that sack of Baker Mayfield was huge in week 2.
Yeah, that Panthers game was probably his best game of the year. He played really well that game.
And then, he had the pick against Baltimore when they were in coverage against another tight end they couldn't stop, and Mark Andrews, and they make the decision. So I'd say Julian Love was one, and because of fit in this offense, I'm going to say Daniel Bellinger. And I know he's a rookie, and I know there's a lot to grow and a lot to develop, but you could see that before he got hurt in Jacksonville, they had gotten to the point where they were going to unleash Daniel Bellinger. And that sounds silly. He's a rookie. Come on, you're buying in. I know you guys like him. I think Bellinger's presence in this offense going into that Jacksonville game was huge. I mean, they were running with him, being key parts of the run game. They had him. Now all of a sudden he's becoming a big part of the red zone. And he continued to make plays down the stretch once he came back from his injury. But I think he's an underappreciated player on this roster that moving forward, They put a lot of time into the development of Bellinger this year as a coaching staff, and I think that'll continue. And I think he's one of those guys that, next year you're looking at this offense, and I think maybe people around the league start seeing him, in the lines of, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there. When Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert were together, what Goddard was allowed Ertz to, they got rid of Ertz because they saw Goddard coming into his own. I could see Bellinger really kind of developing into a player like a Dallas Goddard, where early on he was, made some plays, but then once this kind of got going, he's a big reason in this offense. And you're going to look at him and say, boy, we may have a wide receiver one. If we have Saquon back, Bellinger is top of the list in terms of those weapons that they're going to have for this offense.
Funny story about Dallas Goedert, but we could save that for another time. But yeah, Bellinger, I totally agree with the Bellinger thing. And it's funny because Ingram had his best volume numbers this year, but it wasn't like anywhere. I don't get triggered by much. I got triggered by like, man, Giants fans were missing. I was like, he's averaging like his fourth most yards per game. He just stayed healthy and he's in a good. I didn't miss Evan Ingram at all. Like, because Bellinger was very underrated and we needed a presence of a guy who can kind of do it all at the spot.
And he can block.
And blocking is so huge. And he's very underrated the way he catches the ball. Like, he will high point he will snag that ball out of the air. You think the Packers touched, was it? No, I think it might have been the touchdown versus the Ravens. Like, that was a great catch. The catch versus Patrick Peterson, in the game they ended up losing on the 2-point conversion. Like, he is a technician with the way he catches the ball. Yep. And I definitely think he is underrated. I think he finished fourth by the listeners. So yeah.
Who were the other two? You remember who the other two was in between them?
See, here's where I get triggered with the most underrated is Isaiah Hodgins would finish second. I'm like, I think Hodgins is very like he might even tip into that overrated because he's new and shiny. Right. And then Graham Gano tied for second. And I guess you can make the case for Gano, but I don't think he's underrated. I think it's just we don't talk about kickers much because they're kickers. So, like, right. I'm very appreciative of all those guys. But 25 people got votes. I think Andrew Thomas got one, which was it's like we don't underrate him. Maybe the league did, but
you guys don't. I think the league might. I think there might be some Giants fans too.
Hey, we got him awards now. It worked. He got all pro.
We got even though
and the sad thing is once Trent Williams came back and was healthy, I kind of had him third behind Williams and Tunsil, but I'm not complaining.
No.
I'm not complaining one bit.
Oh no. Our favorite player to talk with or that you have talked with on your podcast?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, this year the best show, even though it was week one, was Saquon and Shep together because I really didn't have to do much talking. They basically went back and forth at each other. That was brilliant. Them going back and forth. Graham Gano I enjoyed this year. Nick Gates was great. Let's see. Who else? Darius Slayton. I told Slayton after the podcast that he was, he can join the media now. Like that. That's how good he is. Just in terms of.
He was my vote for most underrated, anyways.
And he was. I mean, look, he contributed a lot more than I expected this year. That's a credit to him to be able to deal with what he dealt with. Isaiah Hodgins was good too on the podcast.
Hodgins is a media darling in the works. He might be a good guy award nominee next year.
Yeah. I had him the week after he scored his first touchdown. And so I really got to tell his story a little bit on the podcast before it kind of blew up after that. Look, I love the Nick Gates podcast. I know how much you guys love Nick. I just think his story this year, talk about underrated or underplayed or underappreciated. I mean, if he played any other position, the entire league would be talking about Nick Gates right now.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't mean to diminish Saquon or Christian McCaffrey or, I have a lot of people telling me, Brandon Graham and Philly. Yeah, of course, Achilles injury at 34, come back for double-digit sacks. It's amazing. But considering Gates, I would have to say Gates, just based on can dip back into his career and see how far he's come and what he's overcome this year. So appreciate the question, Justin. It makes me think of all the good interviews we were able to get this year. But that was definitely Gano and Gates were probably the two most enjoyable, just turn on the microphone and just sit there and let him talk. And it was great. Gano is a 2-time guy to come on, and he's a lot. His knowledge is a lot deeper than I think you would consider for a kicker kind of thing. He delved in a lot, and I thought that was great.
Let's see. We've went for a while, so we won't take it too much longer. We'll finish off this. How refreshing was it to cover a winning season? Because I know personally, at halftime of week 1, I am like hand in my head, or head in my hand, not hand in my head. It could actually probably both. And I'm like, I can't do another year of this. And I've only been this is only my 4th year doing it. 3rd year full time. I was like, I can't do another year of this. This is going to be horrible. So how refreshing was it to be able to cover a winning Giants
I'll bring
team?
you back a couple weeks earlier than that. When Thibodeau got hurt, after that game, I said to a couple people on the beat, like, what have we done to deserve this? Like, because let's think back to the summer. I don't mean we as Giants. I mean, we as covering the team. When you looked at everything that was going on, there was that one player who you were really excited to cover because you didn't know how far it would blow up. Could it get to Odell in 2014 levels, right? You didn't know. He had that personality where he comes out in week 1 and gets 3 sacks, and all of a sudden you talk about Thibodeau. When he got hurt, I thought to myself, this is going to be another one of those years. Like, here we go. They're not going to succeed. It's going to be very hard to make relationships because it's, they're losing, and the guys who are here are they're not going to look to develop new relationships. So in that respect, it was enjoyable to be able to cover a team that was compelling. I do feel for the guys who have been here and lost and now have the opportunity to win. Daniel Jones and Saquon and Darius Slayton, a guy like Julian Love. I mean, guys who have seen the lowest of the low here, and, if you want to throw Andrew, but Andrew Thomas was only here, a couple of years. So it wasn't like he had dealt with it. So that was rewarding. I think when it comes down to the coaching staff, I think it was kind of cool to see guys talk about what they were going to do and then actually on a weekly basis go out there and actually do it. And schematically, we're going to do this. How many times have in the past we've heard, we're going to create a different game plan every week. And then the Giants would go out and just run the same game plan that they ran the previous week. This year, it was rewarding to hear guys say, look, we're going to attack different defenses differently, or we're going to defend teams differently week to week. And not only did we see that from weeks 1 to 18 and in the playoffs, but you actually saw it in rematches, live and in color. You saw how differently they played Washington the week in MetLife, where, Payne and Allen just dominated. I mean, and Nick Gates and John Feliciano and Glowinski all said, they're stronger than us. You know what I mean? We've got to beat them differently. And when you hear guys say they're physically better than you, you don't think you're going to be able to win the matchup the second time. And then they come out the second time and shut those guys down. And that last drive where Saquon was just, chunk play after chunk play on the ground.
Yeah.
That to me is the most rewarding thing about this team. And I actually got to fly to the playoff game this year. In 2016, we had a drive to Milwaukee and then to Green Bay.
Oh man, that's
because
brutal.
we were all at LaGuardia and we had our flight canceled. So it's nice to get back in the playoffs and actually book a flight and actually fly to the game instead of having to drive. But it's definitely more rewarding to deal with. And I made this comment. I don't know if you guys feel this way, because obviously you're fans first and then you're in the media, but the Giants fans deserve this, but also there's a segment of the fan base who we talk about players needing to learn how to win again. Giants fans need to learn how to win again. And this was a team that you could embrace, because they weren't telling you how they were going to win Super Bowls. They weren't talking about it. I went back and watched the introductory press conference of the last 4 head coaches. 3 of them mentioned the Super Bowl. Brian Dable did not. He didn't talk about Super Bowls, right? He talked about winning championships, but that wasn't the focus this year. And I think fans kind of enjoyed that fact that you didn't have Dave Gettleman walking in saying that he was going to do what he was going to do and he was going to do it. And everybody, oh, rah, rah, yeah, that's great. And then 3 weeks later, you realize, well, saying it and doing it is two different things. So to me, that's the most rewarding thing about covering a winning team again, is that they just felt like they belonged. Like they really did. They felt like they belonged. They weren't doing anything fancy. They were still building. They kept it realistic. Shane didn't compromise the future for fool's gold. He didn't look and say, I got to throw a second round pick for Chase Claypool because everybody says I need a wide receiver. All they did was go and get a guy they knew. And Isaiah Hodgins, I think, quadrupled Chase Pool's numbers. And you didn't lose Claypool. And you didn't lose the second round pick that's actually a first round pick because the Dolphins lost their first rounder. So that's what I would say, Bobby. I think just from a coverage perspective, a respect, the enjoyment, we don't root, we root for stories, but every other year I've covered a coaching search in the last, since Tom Coughlin left.
Yeah.
I mean, so for all the talk, like, to me, that's this off season. That's what this is about. Like, I'm hesitant to start throwing bouquets because I've been here before. I've been here. I've seen year one, you give them credit. Maybe they're moving forward. You hear things. You say, okay, year two, it'll never turn out. I would have never anticipated Joe Judge getting fired last year. Even down the stretch, everything that told me inside the building, he was going to be here. So the idea that that's happened, the way McAdoo just kind of imploded in that second year. Shermer, I felt like it was a little bit more of a short-term thing. They wanted to restore order, and then they were going to replace Shermer regardless. But
I don't think he expected the GM who hired him to go and try and
push
save
him
his
under the
job.
bus, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah,
I mean, Gettleman stole 2 more years by pushing Pat Shermer under the bus, which was unfair. And some of us have said it at the time. If you were going to keep Gettleman, you should keep Shermer, and if you were going to get rid of Shermer, you should get rid of Gettleman. And I think it just put the Giants in a further hole. But yeah, it was enjoyable. Look, it was great. I mean, what it says to me that I was in Philly last week, and I thought Philly was going to win. I think there, you can't talk about a team that has the quote unquote best roster in the NFL, and then all of a sudden think, get lost in the idea and, the Giants are going to completely, dominate them at the Link, a place they haven't won, since Josh Brown was the kicker and Peyton Hillis was the leading rusher. But I actually thought they might. We had to look ahead and book hotels that maybe they'd be going to San Francisco or Dallas. That to me says a lot about where this team was and where they could potentially go, down the stretch and heading into this next season and beyond.
Art, we appreciate you as always. Where can people find all of your work?
Well, Justin mentioned the podcast earlier. All In with Art Stapleton. You can find it everywhere. Apple, Spotify, Omni, anywhere you want podcast. Make sure you look below Talking Giants, and I'll be there somewhere after that. And then everything on NorthJersey.com, all of my coverage, and we appreciate a good year, and obviously move forward now and see how the offseason takes shape. But also Twitter, at art_Stapleton is where people find me there, and I probably spend too much time on there.
Yeah, we all do.
It is what it is. So, but listen, I always appreciate you guys, and again, thanks for the Talking Giants listeners, and for you guys, and this, if I could even show the shirt. Who would have thought we were going to end this season without Kadarius Toney here, right?
I know. There was so much. That first day of camp, man, was like, oh my gosh, this guy's ready to be a star.
We were all ready. Kadarius. But couldn't stay on the field.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again, Art.
All right. Thank you to Art Stapleton for coming on the show. That was actually a very, very fun interview with Art. I really liked, we were having some pre-show conversations, so he might have even said it on the show too, that, we're part of media, but we're not in the media. So I kind of like how there's like this, there's this recognition with a lot of the beat reporters about, what we're doing at Talking Giants. And obviously we thank the beat reporters, and we thank, especially their perspective from the locker room too. So thank you to Art. We got to talk about Manscaped. Breaking news, Manscaped now sells beard products. That's right, they are once again revolutionizing men's grooming with the brand new Beard Hedger Copyright Pro Kit. Now you can finally use Manscaped products to make your drapes match your carpet by going to manscaped.com and using code GIANTS for 20% off plus free shipping. There's a beard shampoo and conditioner. There's a beard oil. There's a beard balm. There's some nice brushes in there. Really, really awesome stuff from Manscaped. Just when you thought that they couldn't take care of you anymore down below with the drapes and your carpet, now they got you above on your face as well. Manscaped nicely sent me one of their kits. They sent me the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. I don't really have much of a beard, so I gave it to one of my best friends as a gift, and he says that he absolutely loves it. We're going to Atlantic City this weekend. He says he's bringing it, and he's going to make sure that he looks good on the craps tables.
I'm also not a beard guy, so I'm giving it to my friend Moncho. So congratulations, Moncho. You don't know that you're getting it yet, but I'm bringing it on Saturday.
So get 20% off and free shipping with the code GIANTS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use code GIANTS. Manscaped Beard Hedger, 1 stroke, 1 guard, 20 lengths. You'll be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did. You'll be glad you did with DraftKings too. Forgot to say that. All right, so we talked about Senior Bowl. Before we close out, Justin, we are going to Daytona it's me, you, and then Jack and Zoe from the We Got Ice guys, who I don't know how familiar our audience is with them, but we're going to be down there. I think it's going to be good, a bit of yin and yang approach to it.
Yep.
So we're going to do a lot of stuff down there. We would like to do a Talking Giants live show like we did in Charlotte, but we kind of got to get set up and figure out the right day to do it. I think we're going to be there from Thursday to Sunday, right,
I honestly think Friday would be the best day to do it. The Friday, the truck race, it's a day that's worth coming to since there is a race. The race will be cheap to get into. I think it still works as general admission. Don't hold me to that. I don't know how Daytona works. So it is, you go every year. So general admission, we're going to do it on Friday. I don't think we're going to have anything to do like contractually for the truck race NASCAR wise. So I think we should just plan to do it on Friday.
Could we do it in the actual stands?
That is something that we can ask. And I guess we would just have to get clearance, and then however many people come, they would have to get cleared to go in.
Just get tickets for the race.
Well, we will play it by ear, but know that Friday will be the day that we'll record our Talking Giants show.
Okay. Because it's people will be on work during the day. It's tough.
People did it in Charlotte.
That's true. But we planned that out well in advance.
A couple weeks.
And we basically had 10 people who were close with her, we're going to come.
Yeah. Also, let me know if you're going to the Super Bowl too. I'm going to the Super Bowl.
Congrats to you, man.
Thank you. With Joe's McFly.
Congrats to Joe's McFly too. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back. Oh, and I wanted to read this letter. I got this letter. I showed up to my office this morning and checked the mail, and I got a letter. And it was addressed to Bobby Skinner, so most of my mail I get here is Robert Skinner. I was like, oh, someone sent me a letter. Dear Talking Giants podcast, I am writing you to tell you that Daniel Jones is not a bad quarterback. Danny Dimes has been hated on basically his whole career, and to be honest, deservedly so. To start off in the 2019 draft, he was taken with a 6th overall pick, which was definitely considered a reach.
This is what this letter is going to be?
Guys like Josh Allen, the defensive Josh Allen, Rashawn Gary, and even Brian Burns. Each of one of these players are proven and young star edge rushers. Jones' stats also weren't great in his 2020. So basically talking about that, and then however, Stephen A. Smith voice, however, this season he has for sure turned it around. This season alone, he had over 3,900 total yards, 21 touchdowns. He actually had 22, my man, and just 5 interceptions. Jones has also looked pretty good in the advanced stat category. This season, his on-target percentage is 81%. That number is higher than guys like Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and even Josh Allen.
That's a
all
true
these
statement.
players are considered top quarterbacks in the league. Now, obviously, I am not stating that Daniel Jones is better than Patrick Mahomes, but I am saying that Daniel Jones has been flying under the radar and is exceeding expectations. Jones has been one of the players who has led the Giants team to a playoff berth, and it will be exciting to see what they can do in the playoffs. Ooh, this was sent a while ago. I haven't checked my office mail in a couple of weeks, Finn. It was exciting. So, Finn, I really enjoyed this
How did
letter.
this person get your address?
I'm assuming, so when I send out Patreon stickers, I give my office address because I'm not going to give people my home address. So I would assume that's how they got it.
All right. I'm going to start writing you letters.
Yeah, just send it to the office. You can't have my home address. You're going to be in Daytona. You're going to be kind of near me. Do you want to stop by the crib?
I feel like you're inviting
I'll
me
just
over.
bring you home. Like I want
you
you
gonna
to
light
meet
some
my
candles?
I want Justin to meet my parents. Like,
oh wow!
I'll go to my parents' house. Look,
and then after I meet your parents, you're gonna light some candles, and we're gonna.
we're doing my brother's bachelor party that Friday night at the truck race.
So we're gonna be recording a Talking Giants podcast when your brother's having your bachelor party.
Kinda. So we have to get it done a little earlier because it is one of the 3 times a year where I drink. So
okay.
All right, appreciate you guys. See you on next Tuesday from the Senior Bowl.
You should have your Mr. Brownstone moment.
No, I refuse to have my Mr. Brownstone moment. We'll see you on Tuesday. Let's win some races. You'll hear me just saying that and laughing to myself. We'll see you on Tuesday from Mobile, Alabama. My favorite place on earth. We'll see you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.